In the hidden corners of the global underworld, far from public view, some of the world's most powerful criminal figures have lived lives of staggering excess. While their empires were built on fear, violence, and illicit trade, their private worlds often looked nothing like the shadows they operated in. Instead, they resembled the fantasies of royalty: palaces in the jungle, private zoos, fleets of exotic cars, and parties that seemed to defy reality itself. This is the story of the most eccentric luxuries of cartel leaders, how extreme wealth reshaped their lives, distorted their priorities, and ultimately became one of their greatest vulnerabilities. For many cartel leaders, luxury was not just about comfort. It was about power, visibility, control. In worlds where respect is enforced, excess becomes a language. The bigger the mansion, the louder the message. Few examples illustrate this better than Pablo Escobar. At the height of his power in the 1980s, Escobar was one of the richest men on earth. But traditional symbols of wealth were not enough. He built Hacienda Nápoles, a sprawling estate covering thousands of acres in rural Colombia. The property included artificial lakes, private airstrips, bullfighting rings, and a mansion modeled after luxury resorts. Most famously, Escobar imported exotic animals from Africa: hippos, giraffes, zebras, elephants, creating a private zoo deep in the jungle. These animals were not hidden. They were a declaration. A drug lord who could bend nature itself to his will. Decades later, some of those hippos still roam Colombia, descendants of Escobar's original collection, an ecological reminder of unchecked power. Luxury also took to the skies. Cartel leaders often relied on fleets of private jets, not only for transportation but as symbols of dominance. Custom interiors, gold-plated fixtures, bedrooms, and even offices in the air were common features. Some aircraft were designed to look indistinguishable from legitimate corporate jets, blurring the line between criminal enterprise and high finance. For others, helicopters became essential tools, used to bypass roads, borders, and authorities entirely. From the air, the world became smaller, governments weaker, and escape always just minutes away. But wealth at this scale required secrecy. Hidden rooms, underground tunnels, and armored panic chambers became standard features of cartel homes. In Mexico, authorities have uncovered mansions with concealed corridors behind bathroom mirrors, trapdoors under beds, and escape tunnels stretching for kilometers beneath city streets. These were not simple hiding places. Some tunnels were equipped with lighting systems, ventilation, rail tracks, and motorcycles, designed for rapid, silent escape. Luxury and paranoia grew side by side. For some leaders, indulgence went even further. There are documented cases of cartel bosses commissioning solid gold weapons, diamond-encrusted pistols, and rifles engraved with personal insignias. These firearms were rarely practical. They were ceremonial, objects meant to be seen, admired, and feared. Cars were another obsession. Limited edition Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bugattis, and Rolls-Royces filled private garages. In some cases, entire collections were buried underground or hidden in warehouses to avoid seizure. Custom modifications included bulletproof glass, reinforced steel frames, and luxury interiors rivaling five-star hotels. Ironically, these vehicles often became liabilities. Their rarity made them impossible to hide. A single exotic car spotted in a rural town could attract more attention than a police siren. But perhaps the most striking extravagance appeared after death. In parts of Mexico and Latin America, cartel leaders built mausoleums that rivaled small mansions. Air-conditioned tombs, marble floors, stained glass windows, sound systems, and even Wi-Fi have been discovered in private cemeteries. Some tombs were designed with living rooms, kitchens, and beds, reflecting a belief that power, comfort, and status should continue beyond the grave. These monuments were meant to immortalize dominance. Instead, many became landmarks for law enforcement and symbols of how deeply excess had replaced discretion. Luxury also extended into daily rituals. Chefs flown in from Europe, imported wines costing tens of thousands of dollars per bottle. Parties featuring international musicians, models, and entertainers, sometimes held in remote jungle locations, protected by armed guards and surveillance systems. In these isolated bubbles, reality bent. Consequences felt distant. Money became abstract. Former associates have described moments where cartel leaders burned stacks of cash simply to stay warm during mountain hideouts. In other cases, millions of dollars were lost to rats, mold, and moisture, hidden so long that the money literally decayed. At that level of wealth, even money became disposable. Yet excess carried a price. The more extravagant the lifestyle, the harder it became to remain invisible. Private zoos required food, veterinarians and transport. Mansions required staff. Jets required pilots and maintenance crews. Every luxury widened the circle of people who knew and could betray. Law enforcement agencies learned to follow the luxuries. Electricity usage in remote areas. Unusual animal imports. Construction materials delivered to inaccessible regions. What once symbolized invincibility slowly became evidence. In many cases, the very objects meant to display power ended up exposing it. Today, new generations of cartel leaders are said to favor quieter forms of luxury. Anonymous condos, digital wealth, art stored in free ports, and businesses designed to blend seamlessly into the global economy. But the legacy of excess remains. The abandoned mansions, the empty airstrips, the animals left behind. The tombs no one visits. They tell a consistent story. When power is built without limits, luxury stops being pleasure and becomes obsession. And in the end, the most eccentric luxury of all may have been the belief that wealth could buy immunity from justice, from betrayal, and from time itself. The story does not end with abandoned estates or silent tombs. For many cartel leaders, luxury also became a way to rewrite identity. Several figures attempted to reinvent themselves as businessmen, philanthropists, or even cultural patrons. Money funded local festivals, churches, sports teams, and entire neighborhoods. In some regions, cartel leaders paid for roads, schools, and medical clinics, often where the state had long been absent. These gestures were not purely altruistic. They were strategic investments. Loyalty purchased through generosity can be as powerful as loyalty enforced through fear. In towns shaped by poverty, luxury flowed downward in controlled doses, enough to inspire gratitude, never enough to challenge authority. In private, however, the contrast was extreme. While communities received concrete and paint, cartel leaders surrounded themselves with rare art, antique furniture, and priceless artifacts. Paintings by European masters, pre-Columbian, sculptures and religious relics filled private collections. Many of these items were stolen, trafficked, or bought through complex laundering networks, disappearing into vaults rarely seen by anyone outside the inner circle. Some leaders developed obsessions with symbolism. Lions, eagles, saints, and skulls appearing repeatedly in their decor. These images reflected how they saw themselves: predators, protectors, martyrs, kings. Religion played a peculiar role in this world of excess. Shrines were built inside mansions. Private chapels were decorated with gold leaf, marble altars, and imported icons. Certain figures prayed daily, seeking protection for shipments, family members, or their own lives. Others blended faith with superstition, consulting shamans, astrologers, or folk saints believed to offer protection beyond the reach of the law. Luxury and fear existed in constant tension. Despite their wealth, cartel leaders rarely slept in the same place 2 nights in a row. Entire bedrooms were replicated across multiple safe houses, each designed to feel identical. Same bed, same furniture, same lighting, so nothing ever felt unfamiliar. For some, comfort came not from extravagance, but from control. Children were raised inside fortified worlds. Private tutors replaced schools. Playgrounds sat behind blast walls. Family members traveled in armored convoys, their lives shaped by privileges most people never experience, and dangers they could never escape. In many cases, luxury failed to protect what mattered most. When arrests came, they were often sudden. A birthday party interrupted, a wedding surrounded, a mansion raided before dawn. Closets filled with designer clothes and luxury watches stood untouched as handcuffs closed around wrists that once signed off on million-dollar deals. Authorities cataloged the spoils, cash stacked wall to wall, jewelry weighing kilograms, closets that resembled high-end boutiques. Yet stripped of context, these items looked strangely hollow, objects without power once separated from the fear that gave them meaning. Some leaders attempted to carry luxury into prison. Cells were transformed with flat-screen televisions, custom furniture, private bathrooms, and gourmet meals smuggled inside. Entire prison wings were effectively controlled by a single inmate, funded by money still flowing from outside. For a time, even incarceration could be shaped by wealth. But prisons are unstable ecosystems. Power shifts, alliances fracture, and eventually, walls close in. Others never made it that far. Their luxuries were frozen in time, unfinished mansions, clothes still hanging in closets, luxury cars left to rust. In some regions, these abandoned spaces have become tourist attractions, cautionary symbols, or urban legends whispered about by locals. The excess fascinates because it feels unreal. It exists at the intersection of fantasy and violence, wealth and fragility. It tempts with beauty, while concealing its cost. And that cost was never paid only by those who lived in luxury. Communities suffered. Ecosystems were damaged. Fear became normalized. Entire generations grew up measuring success not by stability, but by proximity to power. In the end, the most eccentric luxuries of cartel leaders were not the animals, the jets, or the gold. They were the illusions. The illusion that wealth could silence consequences. The illusion that power could be permanent. The illusion that excess could replace legitimacy. History shows a consistent pattern. Empires built on fear eventually collapse under their own weight. What remains are fragments, objects without owners, symbols without meaning, and stories that serve as warnings. Because in a world where everything is for sale, even luxury becomes temporary, and no amount of excess has ever been enough to buy a peaceful ending.